Welcome to the Kansas City Public Library. I'm Henry Fortunato, Director of Public Affairs. I'm glad you decided to join us tonight. We're trying to bring a little class to this place, improve our design sense, that kind of thing. In fact, we are thinking that we really need to have the Nell Hills reading room. So those of you who want to write checks for us and help us do that, well, you know, tonight it is our great pleasure to bring you the third installment of our ongoing series, Kansas City, Cradle of Entrepreneurs. For those of you who've not been here before, this is a series in which everyone's favorite library director conducts public conversations with the notable men and women in the greater Kansas City area who are creating thriving businesses from the ground up. The name of our series derives from the title of a paper delivered several years ago by Dr. Carl Schramm, President and CEO of the Kauffman Foundation. In this paper, Dr. Schramm posits the idea that entrepreneurship once was, and could be yet again, the signature characteristic of Kansas City. To put it in marketing terms, entrepreneurship could be our unique selling proposition on a national and indeed international basis. Here at the library, we could not agree more with that assessment. Our H&R Block Business and Career Center, located on the third floor of this building, offers an extraordinary range of resources as well as personal assistance for budding entrepreneurs. In fact, if you're inspired by tonight's presentation, go upstairs and check it out. We're open late tonight, till 9. Additionally, this November, in conjunction with the Kauffman Foundation's Global Entrepreneurship Week, my dear friend and esteemed colleague, Crosby Kemper III, in an amazing tour de force, will be conducting not one, not two, but 3 back-to-back public conversations on consecutive days with some of the leading lights of Kansas City's entrepreneurial economy. These include Danny O'Neill of The Roastery, Ollie Gates of some rib joint, and Clara Reyes of Dos Mundos. And yes, we'll be having coffee and crumpets with Danny, some kind of pork-based concoction with Ollie, and thanks to our friends at Truman Medical Centers, a light and healthy Latino-themed repast with Clara. I should add that as a precursor to Global Entrepreneurship Week, Crosby will also engage in a public conversation with Carl Schramm himself. But tonight, the floor belongs to Mary Carol Garrity, lifestyle maven supreme and founder of the Atchison-based Nell Hills. So, you know, the other day, during the course of a conversation with a friend of mine, I told him about tonight's program with Mary Carol. He looked at me blankly, as if the name didn't quite register. So I said, well, you know, that woman from Atchison who founded Nell Hills. Recognition flooded his face. Oh, he said, of course. I know Nell Hills. My wife knows Nell Hills. My wife's Suburban knows Nell Hills. Then he paused and took a deep swallow. My checkbook really knows Nell Hills. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. I mean, how else do you end up being called one of the hottest little retailers in America by Forbes magazine? All of that and more is about to be revealed, but briefly, by way of background. Mary Carol Garrity established Nell Hills in 1981. She started in an old bank building in her hometown of Atchison. She named the store after her maternal grandmother, who was an early Kansas pioneer. Over the past 30 years, Nell Hills has become legendary in the decorating world. Since its beginnings as a gourmet food shop, the Nell Hills stores have grown to include the original location, a sister store in Atchison called Garrity's Encore, as well as a Nell Hills at Briarcliff Village here in Kansas City North. That's entrepreneurship, and that's the subject of tonight's program. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mary Carol Garrity and Crosby Camper III.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to the Kansas City Public Library.
Wow, thank you.
Wonderful to have you here. And if you see any elements of accents that you want to change here, we'd be happy to engage in that. Atchison has been known for a strong woman or two, and Mary Carol has created a unique national brand, like Starbucks or Apple. And like Starbucks or Apple, it's the impress of personality, a style in everything she does, everything that she sells, and with every customer who she encounters. So I want to understand where that came from, Mary Carol. So I want to go back to that moment when you came back to Atchison, your hometown, from Wichita, to start a gourmet food shop, your original idea, or your father's original idea for a shop in Atchison. Maybe the first time anybody thought about food in Atchison since Fred Harvey. What was your inspiration for going back?
Well, at the time, I was working in Wichita, and I, of course, grew up in retail. My parents had a small clothing store, and from the time I was about 10 years old, I was down there after school or in the summers, and I was always, my mother was probably the only one of all my friends who worked, so she was, of course, guilt-ridden. And so she always tried to find little chores or things for me to do to feel included in the family business. And so whether I was back on a machine making endless bows that they probably never used, I made so many, or steaming clothes, back at that time, you never put a garment on a rack unless it was steamed perfectly to hang up. The threads were cut and it was steamed. And so anyway, I spent so much time there, and then retail was just in my blood.
In your blood, yeah.
And so how it all happened was every week I would talk to my parents on the phone, and one morning my dad kind of planted the seed. It was always in his mind to get me back to Atchison. And he planted the seed about, there were two women in town that had opened up a candy shop, and they were doing phenomenal. And they were so excited, and they were saying, yeah, what we need is a gourmet food shop. And so we were talking, I'm getting ready for work, and I'm thinking about our conversation. I called him back and I said, I'd like to move back and do this. And he goes, great. And I went into work that day and gave a 2-week notice, and no business plan or anything, and came back and opened up my doors within a couple of months. And the big joke of my family is I'm incapable of cooking. I still can't cook and didn't know anything about food. And I go and I get all this wonderful, lovely imported cheeses. And I can remember one time getting in like a 40-pound wheel of cheese and not having the correct knives to cut it with. And, I just thought, okay, let's go for it. And so, it was just a learning process. And then after, a few years of doing that and getting into coffees and things, I started getting bored with it, and I wanted to expand and keep evolving.
People weren't buying that quarter-sawn cheese. And,
those $12 party trays that you made during the holidays till 2 in the morning just weren't worth it.
Not big margins in that business, but you began to change your product mix, and there's a key moment in your life when you come down to Kansas City to the first of what's now the annual holiday marts, the Junior League Holiday Mart.
And I had some friends that were involved in the Holiday Mart, and they said, Mary Carol, this is what you need to do. You need to come and set up a booth and bring linens. And this is when I kind of had already evolved into a few other things, but still very young in my business. And they said, and set up a booth. And so I was like, oh, that's great. So I go to market, and I buy all this merchandise I haven't even borrowed money yet for, thinking that I could turn it.
As a former banker, I really like that idea. You were spending the money you hadn't even borrowed yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did that a lot in the early years. According to my husband, I still do it. But anyway, so we set up this booth, and I remember I didn't have it, and that was before cell phones and all that. And I remember sending someone to the payphone there in the building to call Atchison. I said, call my dad and tell him to load up the car with more linens. And I remember that day, my parents made 3 trips, 3 carloads.
Because you were selling out.
I was selling out so fast. And,
Wow.
And of course, I hadn't seen more than 10 or 15 customers in my store in one day. And here I had 40 women waiting to check out. So I had died and gone to heaven. And that was...
And so the secret of your success on that day, you'd never done this before. I
No.
mean, you'd never done anything like this before. But your booth, you had an idea about the booth.
I had been at Market, and I have a real dear friend that I've made through the years at Market. She has a little shop in a tiny town like Atchison, and she's in Tennessee, and she had done these shows. And I met her on a bus. Anyway, we're there at Market, and we've become great friends over the years. This has been like 20-some years ago. And I talked to her and I said, well, I'm going to do this Junior League show. And she's like, well, honey, let me tell you about those shows. And she started talking. She says, you need to have the tallest booth. You need to get on a corner. She's given me the whole lowdown, which was great. And so I kind of followed her advice. And
you had the tallest booth.
Yes, we did. We still try.
Yeah. And you had a special bed that was...
We had a bed, and at the time I was doing all these linens, and I didn't have a bed to take, and the big joke was I got all these branches, and we made a twig bed, and we used twine to tie it up with, and then we threw a big lace tablecloth over it, and this is when linens, like the Battenberg lace and everything, were really, really hot. And then I can remember Teresa, one of the girls I worked with, she had an old mattress that was like out in the garage she was going to throw away, so we're carrying it into the Junior League show, and we're kind of trying to cover it up because it was like dirty, and we were like the hillbillies that came to the Junior League show. And it was magical. It was so much fun.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously having the tallest booth and your special bed, covered with lots of lace, obviously, is important. But there must have been something about it too that the Junior League Women, the Holiday Mart fan club. Was it
what
pricing,
happened is we brought in a great selection.
That Battenberg lace.
We brought in all this Battenberg and cutwork lace, everything, which was really hot at the time. We brought it in at an incredible price. There was like one shop in Kansas City that carried it. It was down on the plaza. It was a beautiful store, but it was an expensive store. And so people saw this and thought, wow. And as that show went on, we started getting cars with a couple people in it driving up to Atchison, and I just started, I didn't know any better that I should have had something printed up about how to get to Atchison, because I had no idea. So, and we're just talking the whole time. Okay, it's 15 minutes north of Weston. Have you ever, everybody knew about where Weston was. So, and it just kind of went like that. And then
right.
And it was kind of like a chain letter effect.
So beautiful but affordable, and the chain letter effect, word of mouth. People are telling their friends about this special secret place in Atchison, Nell Hills. Now, let's go back a little bit further to where all this came from. And you mentioned your father and his store. He had a furniture, and your mother worked in the business, a furniture store.
It was clothing
store. And your father, a special person?
Well, both of my parents, and my father's no longer living, but my father was quite the risk taker. I mean, he is the perfect entrepreneur. And so every year I'd be discouraged with my sales, and I just, because I was at the time single, I was trying, I had to make my apartment payment, my car payment, I had to live off of what I was doing.
So you built this business as a single woman?
I started as a single, and for like the first 8 years. And so everything kind of depended on it. And he'd always say, oh, next year's your year. Next year's your year. And after about 3 years, I'm thinking, okay, you've said that the last couple of years. And so that's why I really attribute the Junior League to what success we've had, and also very much of getting it started.
And your father was also an investor, or he helped you, he signed the notes for you?
When I first started, I had saved up, I had $10,000, and he put in $10,000, and we borrowed $10,000. And $30,000 was just a pimple of what I really needed, but I didn't know that. And the nice thing about being 25 years old and doing this, you're so ignorant to everything that you don't have any common sense, that you're a little bit bulletproof, and it kind of works for you in many ways.
You can spend that money you haven't even borrowed yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what was so after about the third year, I bought my dad out. But what I had going for me that a lot of people, especially today, don't have going for them is I had someone who would always co-sign a note for me. Now, I paid it, I worked it out, I did all that, but not everybody has that opportunity.
You had some backing, your father.
I was given that, and that's huge.
New retail.
I think my mother was unaware most of the time when he was doing it.
She
wasn't a risk taker.
Yeah. But she's glad now, right?
Yeah.
And the name Nell Hills. Nell Hill was your grandmother.
That was my maternal grandmother. And when I opened up my shop originally, I called it the Gourmet Corner because it was all about, cheeses and teas and biscuits. And I knew after a couple years I did not want to do that. But I needed to move, or I don't know if I didn't even know if I wanted to do that, but I knew I wanted to expand. I wanted to do other things that was starting to get boring. And so as the store changed and I was going to expand in my building, I had this old building that as I expanded inside that and took over some space that was leased to someone else, that I had an opportunity. And so when I remodeled the second floor, it's an old bank building. Originally it had 3 stories. And back in the 50s, I believe the 3rd story was taken off. And the 2nd story had been kind of a rooming house on top of that years later. And the ceiling was caved in and everything, and so I saved up some money, remodeled that, and then that's when we kind of changed the name, and I called it Nell Hills above Gourmet Corner. And then eventually dropped the Gourmet Corner when there wasn't any food left.
I think, very wise, yeah. I think the secret of your success clearly is the secret of our success is being in a recycled bank building.
That's
and in our case, we went a step further. We have recycled bankers. But, so you had a business plan. You had this well thought out from the beginning.
Yeah, right.
But you got into a lot of different things. I mean, anybody who's been in your store, and I say, how many people here have been at Nell Hills? Okay, right. So we all know you've got the most incredible mix of things, different things, and you can't have a business plan to decide to do this. What is your focus? What is the thing that makes Nell Hills distinctive?
Well, I hope that what makes Nell Hills distinctive is, great product at a very affordable price, but also we like it to be a little bit of a surprise when you come in, so we like to set sort of stages or movie sets, so to speak, or whatever, in different areas. And it's ever changing, and I love change. But
so it's different every time you walk in.
Not every time, but quite a bit. I mean, there's.
If you're coming from Johnson County, it may be
4 times a year. There's major change.
4 times a year. Okay.
We have people that come in, and we're grateful more often than that. But there's an overhaul. But it's kind of like we go to get our inspiration. So there's many places you can get your inspirations. It can be on a trip, on a vacation, or it can be, mainly for me, it's at market. And so you might go into market. So, I might go in to market and get in a complete new category. And, I did that when you think of starting out with cheese, and now we have sofas, artwork, fabric, lamps, whatever. So
it's something different all the time. And when you go, describe going to market for everybody, because I'm not sure everybody understands that. You go to places like High Point, North
Carolina, and it's probably one of the largest furniture, and then probably the largest accessory market now is Atlanta, Georgia. But when you go, you're just bombarded with all these beautiful things. Now, some things are just unattainable. They're just ridiculously expensive, and you just think, okay, I sure like to find that lamp, but for a third of that price,
right,
to sell. But you go. Now, my husband, probably about 10 years ago, I talked him into coming into business with me. And, of course, he would roll his eyes at how I do things and throw up his hands. And so when I went to market...
He's a lawyer.
Yeah. And so when I would go to market, he decided he had to have, all these categories and have it all itemized for me. So I would do a better job of buying, and that I know I needed X amount of dollars in lamps and X amount of dollars and this and that. Well, I don't really pay attention to it. And I just go, and if I find something, I buy it. And so to his dismay, he has just given up, and he doesn't give me any information when I go to market now. He just please don't buy too much. And, He always says we'd like it on the hip and not in the warehouse.
As someone who's been in the shop a number of times, the thing that amazes me is the amount. You walk in and it's like walking into a Victorian Christmas, or there's just such a word I use is cornucopia. There's so many things, and the aisles are crowded. You have to walk around things and through things and whatnot. And you've used a couple of phrases or words that I like. One phrase I like is lifestyle vignettes. Mm-hmm. Okay, describe what you mean by lifestyle vignettes.
Well, like we'll set up a little room, and we'll have. And hopefully, when we do this, we do a good enough job that we have several different looks. So if it's a young family, something like this one look, like maybe it's really colorful and we've used Sunbrella fabric, so it's kid friendly and things like that, that they can look at that and say, that'd be great, my family room. Or an empty nester who's downsizing, maybe it's for their new place, it's a little smaller scale furniture, but it's very understatedly done, and it's very, it's just what they like. Or, just, so we try to, and we were talking about the store with everything in it and the cornucopia. I think that describes our Atchison store more than our Kansas City store.
Right.
But we try to have lots of different looks, but still be true to our philosophy. And we know we don't have everything for everyone, but
you got a lot for a lot of people.
We hope so. We hope so. We try.
And another word that you use that I think is interesting, and again obvious to anybody who's been in the store, is the idea of layers, of layering thing. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of furniture stores or gift stores, the individual object, or if you go, if you read Architectural Digest or something, sort of everybody focus on the individual object, but you've got layers and layers of things. So is it?
And some people require fewer layers than others. I mean, so it's kind of how you like your home. But a lot of times, like I was talking to a lady the other day, and she had come in, she'd bought beautiful furniture, we had it delivered, but it just wasn't right yet. And so I said, well, bring me in some photos, let me look at, see. Well, she didn't have anything hanging on her wall. She had, and I'm just, and I was just saying, you just need to add that layer of artwork and things and just finish it out, or pillows, or bring in your colors. But again, sometimes we go overboard in the store, and it's not necessarily what we think somebody may want in their home. But when we first opened up Briarcliff, we tried to do the vignettes to be more like you would have in your home, and people were discouraged because it wasn't as lush as it is in Atchison. So we realized that didn't work. We want to keep the stores entirely different. For some people, Atchison's too much. It's too overwhelming to go in. And they like Briarcliff, like we might have an accessory, and someone might buy it in Atchison, and they might bring it back to us, and they'd say, I got it home and I loved it, but I just didn't know what to do with it. Where I think at our Briarcliff store, you can see it on a mantle, or you can see what to do with it. It's not in a maze of objects.
Different ways of coming to the customer. But one of the secrets of your success clearly is your relationship to the customer. You just mentioned about customers bringing to you pictures of their homes. And you're out on the floor all the time. You don't have an office, as you said. There's the famous basket. I don't know if you still carry your basket around, which used to be your office.
Uh-huh. And I was saying that there's a wonderful man up in St. Joe that had an appliance business named Bob Fay, and he described it the way I want it to be for me, and is that his office were in his shoes. And I love that.
Yeah.
I told him I was stealing that line.
And it's a great one. And clearly you've got a direct relationship to the customer. And so to talk about that a little bit, how do you get a feel for the customer? What's the direct relationship there?
Well, I think if you're out on your floor all the time, I think I don't understand people that have large businesses and go to market and they're back in an office, they're never on the floor, because I don't understand how they know what the customer wants. And we've gone through growing pains where we've dropped the ball on things, and we've done it, and I hate it. And we always, whenever we have expanded, but we try to, and it's just part of the growth process, I think. And it's just, but we try to keep a relationship with our customer. And usually, a lot of people that have shopped with us for years and for several years. It'll be this November. I'll be in business 30 years, so they know me pretty well, and I know them.
She greeted a number of people personally.
And if I don't know by name, I know by face.
Right. So, but you mentioned some mistakes you made. Other than that 40-pound cheese, what's your biggest mistake?
That was a big one. I mean, there are times when we've grown too fast, when we've done it. I think, I think what my concern is always is to take what we have and make it better. But, like a lot of times I try to have, like, for instance, mistakes we've made. Like, a lot of times I will bring in a container of furniture, and it might be of case goods, like made in Indonesia. Well, if I buy it by the container, the company sells it for half of what they normally would sell it to me for, so then I can pass that savings on to the customer. But I have all those dollars. When you do a container, you have $30,000 or $40,000 tied up in your warehouse of that one product. And if you're doing several containers, then if you've made a mistake on that container, it's a big mistake.
There's a big difference between making a mistake on a lamp or a bowl or a throw rug and making a mistake on a sofa.
Yeah, or on 75 chairs or something like that, or 144 chairs. So.
So when you went into the furniture business, I mean, and you've expanded from the original Nell Hills. Now you have 3 locations, 2 in Atchison and 1 at Briarcliff. And Briarcliff is where you've got most of the furniture now?
Most of the furniture. I mean, we do have furniture up in Atchison, but it has just a little bit different feel. But we have tried to have a great mix at all the stores, but we've also tried to keep them very different from each other, so that you'll see a theme, a reoccurring theme, or you might see a few of the same things, but we try to really make it so it has a different feel in it. And really, a lot of times, the different stores appeal to different people. Not the same. I have some customers who like going to both stores, but they always have their favorite.
Right. Talk to me for a second. I mean, there's a kind of history of changing and at the same time democratization of taste in America. And the other Nell, besides Nell Hills, Nell Donnelly, Nell Reed. She learned this and was a great exponent of this, trying to bring taste to the everyday work clothes of American women. You've brought this kind of amazing concept of fashion and taste to the gift store. And is there a change that's going on in America? And how do you touch and feel that? What's?
Well, I don't think we have brought taste to anything. I think what our niche is finding out what our customer wants. I mean, the customer's very savvy, and there's the people that come to Nell Hills, I feel for the most part, are people who are into decorating their homes. They want to have a say. They don't want just to have some designer come in and say, do my room for me. That's not our customer. And so our customer's very involved with their home. And I think what our job is to give them options for them to pick and to use, and maybe give them great options, or just say, are you going to like that 7 years down the road?
But the great option idea, a word that you've used in a couple of the interviews that I've seen is the word treasure, that your customer is looking for a treasure. And so you've got to go out and find those treasures for them and present them.
We do, and it's getting harder and harder. And what we always talk about at Nell Hills is, we have a really mix of price range. We have what I call my cheater pieces, which might be in a little accessory that's $5 or $10 that looks like $150. But we also have, like some antique accessories that are quite expensive, or some others. So we mix it all up, and I think that's what a lot of us do in our homes. I know I do.
Right.
And if I like it, I'm going to use it, no matter what.
Yeah, so you're not only going to the gift show in Atlanta or New York and the furniture show in High Point, but you also go to places like Belgium.
We don't as much anymore. My husband especially did a lot of it. We used to bring, 5 or 6 containers a year back. But we're finding out that so many people my age and older, we have our antiques or we have our pieces, and the younger people don't really want antiques. They're, you know, if any of us that have antiques, we know that they're tricky. The functionality of them, you can use it, but you know, like I have a bibliothèque that when I open up the door, I say a little prayer and kind of hold it up before I close it because it can come off the hinge. And we've had people work on it, and nobody can get it right. And that's just characteristic of antiques, but not everybody wants that or understands that. But
so you do see a change of taste between your older customers who are still into antiques and your younger customers.
And there are still some younger people that are in antiques, and there's some people my age and older who want to go into a little transitional. They want it just a little bit hipper, or a little bit clean lines, or they want to mix it. They want to mix it up with their antiques. I mean, we think you can mix it all up, and if you love it, it works. You know, it comes out great, but. So, you know, that's kind of a tough question because, I mean, I think there's so many different avenues you can take that.
Right. But it's one of your successes is that you can go down different avenues. You've got, again, the sort of cornucopia idea. You've got lots of things for lots of different people.
And I love it because I get to live vicariously through a lot of my customers. You know, I get to, you know, different people come in and they have different style homes and, you know, there's hardly anything I don't like, and so it's really fun to work with them and see.
Do you ever go to people's homes and see the things you've sold them in the?
I never get to because I work 7 days a week. Because
you're working 7 days a week.
But every once in a while, someone will bring in photos, or on our Facebook, they'll send us a photo or something, and it's so rewarding to get to see that after.
Now, one thing that we all think we know about retail is that it's a huge Christmas business, a holiday season business. But your business is not counter-cyclical to that, but maybe you're slightly different in that you told me that maybe your business is just about over for the year right now.
No, not yet, but our holiday business starts so much earlier than a lot of places. And so up in Atchison
because you're a destination,
now,
so.
Especially, we're doing Christmas a little later at Briarcliff. We're just starting it, but it's in full gear up in Atchison, and you know, that's what they're selling right now. They're real busy, they're having great days, and you know, they're saying it was all Christmas. You know, everybody's going home with glitter in their hair, and you know.
Oops. Thank you.
So Christmas is in full fledged. I was mentioning to you that for us, Thanksgiving, if we still have it in Atchison in Thanksgiving, it's pretty much over with for us. People don't have time to go to Atchison because their kids are in school programs. They're going to parties they normally don't go to. They're too busy. Now we'll get a little later at the Briarcliff store.
And you've got, for the Atchison store, you've got an incredible statistic about the percentage of people and the number of miles that people come.
About 98% of the people that walk through our front door have driven an hour and 15 minutes or longer to get there. So, you know, our feel is we better make it worth their while.
Right.
So it just kills me, like if we're in transition or if we're repainting the store or whatever, it's a mess and somebody's walked through that door. It's like having them at your home and having your home a mess. I hate it. So we try just to have sections where we're doing that, but then of course, you know, right after the holidays, it's, you know, everything changes. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, talk for a second about your decision to expand into Briarcliff, and that must have been, expanding in Atchison with a second store is a fairly big jump, but expanding outside of Atchison into Kansas City proper with Briarcliff and into the big furniture, the much bigger investment, and you've done some things differently, your signature lines and whatnot. Talk about that.
Well, you know,
and the timing of that too, because that's about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You may remember what happened 3 years ago.
Well, I do, but. I had always said that I would never expand outside of Atchison. Atchison's my hometown. That was going to be it. And my husband always kept saying, I think you need to do something in Kansas City. And this is it. I'm only going to do it here. And then one day there had been a couple of hints, and then I got a phone call from Patty Garney, and she said, you know, we would like to talk to you about opening up a store in Briarcliff. And I said, you know, I don't want to waste your time because I'm never going to expand, ever. And she's like, well, just come on down, maybe, you know. And, you know, 30 days later, I was signing my life away. So much for that. But, you know, it was a hard decision, even though I didn't take a lot of time to think about it, because I felt like that, especially being in my hometown, that it might be a disloyalty to expand, as crazy as that sounds, but I had been doing it there for so long. We were at the max of what we could do, and I love change. I mean, that's what Nell Hills has all been about. So I was all geared up for the change and to do this in a new challenge, but I wasn't geared up for the economy to go south the year I opened. So that wasn't what I was geared up for.
So a big risk and a big investment, and it's worked out, but some hard times or some nervousness.
Lots of nerves, because we bought our ground, we built our building, so it was a lot higher risk than it ever had been in Atchison.
Right.
So.
And you did some new things. You began to do signature lines.
There's a company here out in Olathe called Gerson Company, and we have done a signature line with them where it's sold nationwide to many stores. And then so that was a nice local thing. With our paint, Davis Paint Company here in Kansas City manufactures, and it's a higher end of paint, and it's a great paint, and we've been partnership with them on that. And so
books, signature
books. We have books, and Andrews McNeil out of Kansas City here has done our books, and we have 7 books. And so, there's been just some great things, but it's all stayed very local.
All very local, but you're online now too.
We're online, and we're working on that. We're improving on that, and then we do blogging, and we do Facebook, which is something that wasn't out there when I opened up my stores, which has changed so much.
And there's a big question in my mind, and Facebook may be a big help in doing this. Some of the sort of the communal experiences on the web may help this. But one of the things that's so successful about the stores is that it is an experience. It's a tactile experience. It's there's literally, if you'll pardon the pun, a fabric to the experience. Online, it's harder to see that, but maybe you're able to get that through Facebook.
We're learning. We are not there yet, but we are learning, and we have some ideas, and I think it will it's coming around. Our Facebook, we have about 4,500 hits a week on it, and we have more than that on our blog, and so that has just been a real important avenue, and so people will see it. One of the girls at work posts a new picture every day, or at least 5 days a week on our Facebook, and we have people that call us, and then when we do our blog, which is also a syndicated column that goes to a lot of newspapers, we'll get phone calls on that, and so we're kind of getting that related into our website, and that's something my husband's doing, and we're really starting to rock on that.
So you think there's a real future in that?
We do, and I kind of fought it. I'm not, technology, they won't even let me touch the registers at Nell Hills because I'll have them so messed up. And so anyway, that is not my deal, so I've had to kind of go in there kicking and screaming, and I was not a believer in it because I think at Nell Hills should be such an experience, but now with the technology, it can still be an experience, a great experience. So,
right. So, has there ever been a moment where you just had this, oh my God, I can't believe I'm involved in this, and I need to run away and hide, or sell the business and go to the Bahamas,
Well, I always say if it doesn't work, I'm going to bartend in Key West, but
okay,
I'm getting too old. I'll have to do the lunch crowd now.
Yeah.
But you know what? No, it's usually, every once in a while, it's 95% of the time it's so much fun and it's great, but that 5% or 10% when everything kind of goes wrong, no, it isn't fun, and you do think it, but,
But you find a reason to get up every morning, and you're pretty excited to go to work.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
That's now, but you got a fairly big company now, 100 employees or so, multi-million sales, and a lot of different things you're doing. How do you communicate that enthusiasm? How do you model that enthusiasm for your 100 employees, and keep it? Know when you're in Atchison, they're doing it in Briarcliff, or you're in Briarcliff, they're doing it in Atchison, and it's being communicated online.
Well, I have a really great team of people, and that was something that was a new experience in Kansas City because in the beginning we were hiring people, and in a little town you know everybody, someone's cousin or sister or somebody's moved to town. I mean, you pretty much know, and that was really tough. I feel like we have a great team now, and we learned a lot of things, with doing the furniture and things. At first it was, I was told, and it was such a different animal in Kansas City. We first did commission sales, and I found out that I just don't want to run a store of commission sales. And, we had to work things out, and it's taken a couple years. And not that we don't have a lot more challenges, or there's so many more ways that we can improve it. But we'll have 4 years behind us this November, and it's been a learning curve, and I'm sure it'll continue to be. But I think we I'm feeling more comfortable in there.
And so you're still pretty excited about the growth of the company and about what you're doing every day. You don't have a desire to sell out to Martha Stewart or Mary Ann McBride
I don't think anybody biased, but no, I
Walmart
don't. No. And I will say this, and I really mean this: we will never get any bigger than we are now. This is it.
Of course, you probably said that 4 years ago, didn't you? Too?
No, that I know for sure. But I mean that I can. But you know what? I think we still have so much more room for improvement, and that's kind of my goal, and that's kind of what, that's what makes it, like today, for instance, I'm just thinking, things are starting to look a little tired. So we started moving furniture and bringing new furniture over and moving. You would not believe how much we had the store torn up for the entire day today before we came here. And, just shaking it up, and that makes it kind of exciting. And
so is
fun.
there a new theme? Did you have an idea for a new theme?
Or kind of doing some new color palettes together, or just doing those lifestyle vignettes, just kind of doing it. And we have, it's constantly things coming in. The hardest part is, like, I know what's coming in January, and I also know what's coming in November, and I'm excited about what I have now, but then I'm also excited about what's coming in there. Right. So you're just kind of like all over the place. Waiting
for the big deal. So in your own house, what's your own house like? Got lots of stuff in your own house? Little stuff?
According to my husband, we do. I don't think so. I think it's very pared down, but anyway, But, we have a great home. We've been in it for 22 years. I love it. One time my husband said, "You work so many hours. You need to get a hobby." And I said, "I have one. You can't afford our home." And so he kind of piped down. But, I don't change things as much as you think I would, because I like what I have. But, I probably, if I change anything, it's probably pillows. I'm kind of a pillow nut.
Yeah, there's something either you or your husband said about that during the recession, the thing that saved you was pillows. You kept selling lots and lots of pillows. Were people crying into the pillows?
No, but if they weren't buying a new sofa, they were buying pillows.
They were buying pillows to,
and kind of during that whole deal, and not that it's not over with now, but we can see such a huge improvement over the last couple of years. But, Nell Hills was built on items $20 and under, and sometimes I have to remind myself and everybody of that, and
that's still important.
That $20 item is just as important as that sofa, and and the experience that someone comes in, whether and this sounds like, oh sure, but whether they buy $5 or they buy something more expensive, it's real important to me that happens.
Are there any objects from your childhood or your mother's house or in your house today that are sort of, to be grand about it, rosebud objects? I mean, things that have meant a lot to you over the years that are your treasures?
Oh, yes. I mean, I have a lot. I have received gifts that are probably one of the things that one thing that I really love that has just been kind of added in my home is my husband was going through some things, and he thinks he has all his family archives, and he found a letter or a poem that his grandmother wrote about growing old, and she wrote it in her later years, and it's this little handwritten note, and she lived here in Kansas City, and the zip code, she had it on her stationery, the zip code is like one numeral, it's like 2 is the zip code. That's how old it is. And he practically had tears in his eyes, and he came and he showed it to me. He says, "Look what I found." He said, "I cannot believe this. I never saw this before." And I had it matted and framed, and it's hanging in our living room. And that's a really great object. Photos and things that we've collected together.
Yeah.
An antique cookie jar that was actually his grandmother's again. But so there is. I mean, I don't. But it's still fun. But even if you have your house put together, you always want to do a little bit of seasonal things, whether it's some new greens, Christmas greens, or some fall leaves, or some, or just some fun accessories that were $20. That if you have them for 2 or 3 years or 5 years, and you give them to one of the kids or put them in a garage sale, it just was a pop of color going down your dining room table or something.
Well, change is a good thing. It's a belief in the future. So you're
that's good. Well, it keeps me in business.
Yeah, it keeps you in business. Yeah, keeps you with the future. Well, talk for a second, if you would, about and whether this is meaningful or not to you, about being a woman in business, starting business now 30 years ago. Your 30th anniversary will be next month.
Yeah.
The 30th anniversary of Nell Hills, and you started at a time when. Not completely unusual, but not as usual as it is today, for sure, about a woman being in business, a single woman, a young single woman being in business, running a retail operation. Was that tough?
Well, it would have been. It would have been impossible if I hadn't had a father that would co-sign notes. But I also remember my mother. My dad built. Back in the 60s, urban renewal came into Atchison. We were one of the first malls. Unfortunately, we'll be one of the last to be ripped out. But anyway, one of the first malls in the United States put in. And my dad built a building, and he had a ladies' ready-to-wear and a large men's clothing operation. And at one point, he came home, and he told my mother, who was a homemaker, that she was going to have to, he needed her, she was going to have to come in and start working full-time and take over the ladies' ready-to-wear. And it wasn't her choice. She loved being a homemaker, but she did it. And I remember going to market with her, and I somehow could talk her out of taking me out of school and going down. And the market then was in Dallas, the ladies' ready-to-wear. It was really big. Well, it was all run by men. It was men salesmen, men buyers. There were very few women in it. And my mom is a really tiny person. She weighs now about 85 pounds, but then she didn't weigh that much more. And real little, real petite. And I remember her working with a salesman, and he was just kind of a little bit condescending. And he was kind of telling her what she could and she couldn't do. And with that, I remember, I'm in high school, junior high. And I remember she standing up, she took the order, she tore it in half, and she handed it to him, and she said, "Thank you, I won't be needing your line." And she turned on her heel and walked out. And of course, I'm just following behind her. And I'm thinking, at the time, I didn't know what it was a lesson. I was probably thinking at the time, I'm embarrassed. But I realized later how strong she was and how savvy she is. Now, in my industry, there's tons of women now, and there's not any. There isn't a big deal. But there were fewer women 30 years ago, but really watching her, kind of taught me some lessons.
And watching your mother and maybe some of the other women in Atchison, is that model something for you that's kept with you?
Well, you had kind of mentioned to me when we visited about Amelia Earhart, if she was kind of a model, and I said, not really. I mean, she was just always this wonderful story, but growing up in a small town, there's so many women, whether it's your friends' mothers or just women that from coming in the shops. And what's so interesting is, and I think that's what was so fun in Atchison and is in Kansas City, is everyone has a story. Every human has a story. And so watching a lot of these women, whether they were raising large family and they were widowed at a young age or whatever, there are growing up in a small town, you get so many role models.
There are lots of small town heroes. Mm-hmm. Well, to sort of wrap things up, is there any advice you have or a secret to your success that you'd have if there was a young woman or young man starting out in business, retail or otherwise? What's the secret? What do you have to make it work?
Well, the main thing is you have to be very passionate, and there's always trade-offs. There's just early this fall, I went with a friend of mine here and some other girls to the lake, and we were there for the weekend. And got back that night, and I'm telling my husband about it, and he goes, "Well, Mary Carol, that's what most people do. They take their weekends and they go places and they do things like that." But you know, someone will say something to my husband about all the hours I work, and he goes, "If Mary Carol was a pro golfer and she golfed 7 days a week, would you feel sorry for her?" And they said no. And he goes, "Well, don't feel sorry for her now, because she's doing exactly what she wants." But with saying that, there are trade-offs. I mean, you do kind of, sometimes you might miss things, but there's trade-offs in no matter what you do. Yeah. But you need to be very passionate about it and love it and be willing to, you know, just do whatever it takes to make it work. And saying that, that was just my style of doing it. Somebody else may be able to do it and not, you know, kind of be a workaholic or whatever. But for me, that's kind of my deal, my bag. But
so having passion and being willing to work hard,
maybe having a father who'll co-sign your notes.
Your father co-sign your the secret.
It's just tough. It's tough. You know, when I did it 30 years ago, it was loans were easier to get. It was just, you know, it was just so different, and so it's tough. It's tough. But there are tools like the internet and all that. There's so many different tools too that I didn't have. That maybe there's a balance there.
It's easier. Maybe you started a very small business today. Well,
I think, can I interrupt one thing? I think it's real important to have small businesses, because the thing that scares me most about what's going on is that big businesses are buying up smaller businesses. We just had a big kind of pharmacy company come into Atchison, and they bought up all our little pharmacist stores, you know, and that's happening all over. You know, there's the big appliance stores, and we're not, you know, I consider myself a mom pa kind of operation, and that we need that. We need more of those. It's real important, because you go to a shopping center, it's all the same stores,
and
no matter what
too
part
much
of the country.
concentration of what we do on the big folks, and the real jobs, the Kauffman Foundation tells us this, are created by small businesses. As you have, I mean, you now have 100 employees, and so you're who's building this country. You're who's making the jobs.
But we need to back
available.
up more of that. I mean, we need more of that in different ways.
Agree with you more. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard tonight from a woman whose undying passion and whose great involvement with her customers is a great lesson in entrepreneurship. And I just want to say that it's my goal, is I think it ought to be everybody's goal, to have Mary Carol Garrity as my personal shopper.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. That's nice.
Thanks very much, Mary Carol Garrity. Thanks, all of you. We'll see you next time. And you were fantastic.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.